In the heart of medieval England, when castles towered over the hills and legends were born with every battle, there existed a wizard whose courage would become synonymous with heroism for all generations to come. His name would echo through the centuries, not only as one of the most powerful wizards of his time, but as the founder of one of the most respected houses in the wizarding world. Magic was wild, wizards lived in hiding and persecuted. Magical knowledge was passed down fragmentarily and dangerously. But this man was brave enough to dream of the impossible, a school where young wizards could learn in safety, where magic was celebrated rather than feared. This man was Godric Gryffindor, and his story forever changed the wizarding world we know today. But before we dive into this epic journey through the centuries, I need your help. We're almost reaching our goal of 1,000 subscribers, and each of you makes a difference. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, click the subscribe button and activate the bell so you don't miss any content about the magical world. And in the comments, tell me which city you're watching from. I love knowing where our magical explorers come from. Godric Gryffindor was born around the 10th century, at a time when England was still divided into kingdoms, and the Viking presence still haunted the northern coasts. The magical world of that era was very different from what we know today. There was no Ministry of Magic, no laws regulating the use of spells, and certainly no organized schools to teach young wizards. Magic was learned rudimentarily, passed from master to apprentice, often from father to son, in ancient and secret family traditions. From a young age, Godric demonstrated not only exceptional magical aptitude, but also a courage that set him apart. Legends tell of him being able to face the most fearsome magical creatures with nothing more than his wand and unwavering determination. His reputation as a fearless wizard quickly spread throughout the magical communities across Britain. What made Godric truly special was not only his magical power, but also his progressive outlook for the time. While many wizards were content to live in isolation, practicing magic in secret and teaching only their direct descendants, Godric believed that magic should be shared and taught in an organized manner. He saw the waste of magical talent that occurred when young wizards born into Muggle families did not receive a proper education, or when wizards from magical families received only limited knowledge. One of Godric Gryffindor's most striking features was his famous sword, an elven blade forged by goblins and imbued with unique magical properties. This was no ordinary weapon. Gryffindor's sword possessed the extraordinary ability to absorb substances that strengthened it when facing powerful enemies. This characteristic would become crucial centuries later when the sword absorbed basilisk venom, gaining the ability to destroy Horcruxes. The sword was more than a weapon to Godric, it was a symbol of his philosophy. While other wizards relied solely on their wands and spells, Godric believed that true courage sometimes required facing danger more directly and personally. He was known for using his sword in combat against dark creatures, demonstrating that bravery lay not only in magical power, but in the willingness to fight for what was right, regardless of personal risk. Stories of Godric's adventures with his sword became legendary. He is said to have faced dragons in the northern mountains, defeated groups of trolls that terrorized Muggle villages, and fought dark wizards who used magic to oppress others. Each victory not only enhanced his reputation, but also solidified his conviction that wizards had a responsibility to protect both the magical and Muggle worlds. The story of how Godric met Rowena Ravenclaw, Helga Hufflepuff, and Salazar Slytherin is one of the most fascinating in the medieval wizarding world. It was no coincidence that these four extraordinary wizards met. Each had independently reached the same conclusion. The wizarding world needed a radical change in the way it educated its children. Rowena Ravenclaw, the brilliant witch who valued intelligence and learning above all else, had already begun collecting magical knowledge from across Europe. She saw the need to preserve and systematize the magical knowledge that was being lost over time. Helga Hufflepuff, known for her welcoming nature and sense of justice, believed that all young wizards, regardless of their background, deserved access to magical education. And Salazar Slytherin, with his cunning and ambition, recognized that magical power needed to be cultivated and directed properly. The initial meeting between the four took place, according to legend, during an informal council of powerful wizards who met periodically to discuss issues affecting the entire magical community. It was common at the time for influential wizards to meet to exchange information about magical threats, newly discovered spells, or issues related to interaction with the Muggle world. During one of these meetings, the four found themselves embroiled in a discussion about the future of magic in Britain. Godric expressed concern about the growing number of young wizards lacking proper education, resulting in magical accidents and inappropriate spell use. Rowena added that much magical knowledge was being lost because there was no centralized place to preserve it. Helga spoke of talented young people she had encountered living in precarious conditions, without access to any form of magical education. And Salazar, ever the pragmatist, pointed out that without organization and structure, the magical community was vulnerable to both internal and external threats. The idea of creating a school of magic didn't just happen. It was the result of many discussions, debates, and careful planning among the four founders. Each brought their own unique perspective to the project, and it was this diversity of viewpoints that made Hogwarts such a complete and enduring institution. Godric saw the school as a place where courage would be cultivated and celebrated. For him, it wasn't enough for students to simply learn spells and potions. They needed to develop the character necessary to use their magic responsibly and courageously. His vision was for an institution that would produce not only competent wizards, but heroes capable of upholding the most important values of magical society. The debate over where to establish the school was intense. They needed a location that was safe, isolated enough to maintain the magical secret, yet accessible to families from across Britain. Godric favoured a location in the Scottish mountains, arguing that the Highlands offered natural protection and a sense of grandeur that would inspire students. Rowena preferred a location near a major library or centre of learning. Helga wanted to ensure the location would be welcoming and comfortable for children far from home. Salazar insisted they needed a location with natural defences and magical resources. The site they eventually chose, a remote area in the Scottish Highlands, near a large loch, met all the criteria. Most importantly, it was a place with a natural concentration of ancient magic, where the barriers between the magical world and the natural world were particularly thin. This would allow the school to be protected by powerful enchantments and provide a rich environment for magical learning. The construction of Hogwarts was an unprecedented magical feat at the time. The four founders worked together, using a combination of magic, adapted Muggle architecture, and even the help of local magical creatures. Godric was instrumental in establishing the school's defenses, creating enchantments that would protect students from outside threats. Hogwarts' famous architecture, with its moving staircases, talking portraits, and secret passages, was the result of the founders' collective vision. Godric contributed the idea that the school should be a dynamic and challenging place, where students would need courage and determination to navigate the corridors and discover its secrets. He believed that facing small daily challenges would help prepare students for greater challenges in life. The house system was a revolutionary innovation for its time. Rather than separating students solely by age or ability, the founders decided to group them by personality traits and values. Godric's house, Gryffindor, would be home to those who demonstrated courage, determination, and nobility of spirit. He believed that students with these characteristics would inspire each other, and further developed these qualities throughout their years at Hogwarts. Hogwarts' early years were both challenging and rewarding. The four founders served not only as headmasters, but also as head teachers in their respective specialties. Godric taught defense against the dark arts, a subject he had essentially created by systematizing knowledge previously passed down only orally among experienced wizards. Godric's classes were known for being practical and challenging. He didn't believe in learning theory alone. His students practiced defensive spells against real, properly controlled creatures, learned to duel honorably and ethically, and were taught to recognize and combat dark magic. His philosophy was that the best defense was preparation, and that courage without knowledge was merely recklessness. One of the founders' most ingenious creations was the sorting hat, and Godric played a crucial role in its conception. The challenge was to create a fair and accurate method for determining which house would be best for each student. They couldn't simply conduct interviews. That would be too time-consuming and subjective. Nor could they rely solely on ability tests, since what mattered were internal character traits. The solution came from the combined magical genius of the four founders. They took Godric's own hat, a simple brown woolen hat, but one he had worn on many adventures, and which had absorbed something of his personality and experiences. Each of the founders then contributed a part of their own magical essence and personality to the hat. The result was a unique creation, a magical object that could literally read the minds and hearts of students, understanding not just their superficial thoughts, but their deepest values, fears, ambitions, and potential. The hat didn't just sort students into houses. It understood them in ways they sometimes didn't even understand themselves. Godric was particularly proud of this creation because it embodied his values of justice and courage. The sorting hat never discriminated based on family background, wealth, or appearance. It looked only at a person's heart. For Godric, this represented the ideal that true nobility came from character, not birth. While courage is the most well-known characteristic associated with Gryffindor House, Godric had a much broader view of what it meant to be truly courageous. For him, courage was not simply the absence of fear or the willingness to take physical risks. It was a complex set of virtues that included moral integrity, compassion for the weak, determination in the face of adversity, and the willingness to make personal sacrifices for the greater good. This comprehensive view of courage profoundly influenced how Gryffindor House developed over the centuries. Gryffindors were not only the most willing to fight, they were often the first to champion just causes, the most willing to challenge authority when it was unjust, and the most likely to make personal sacrifices for their convictions. Godric also highly valued loyalty, but not blind loyalty. He distinguished between loyalty based on fear or obligation and loyalty based on mutual respect and shared values. For him, a true Gryffindor would be loyal to their friends, family, and principles, but would have the courage to question when that loyalty conflicted with what was morally right. Chivalry was another core value that Godric incorporated into his house's identity. He believed that those with power, whether physical, magical, or social, had a responsibility to protect those who could not protect themselves. This was not a paternalistic view, but rather an acknowledgement that privilege comes with responsibility. Gryffindors were taught to use their strength to elevate others, not to dominate them. In the early years of Hogwarts, the four founders worked in relative harmony, their different philosophies complementing each other to create a well-rounded magical education. However, as time passed, fundamental differences in worldview began to create tensions, especially between Godric and Salazar. The issue that most divided the founders was the admission of Muggle-born students. Salazar firmly believed that only pure-blood wizards should be admitted to Hogwarts, arguing that those without a magical family heritage could not truly understand or appreciate magic. For him, this was not necessarily a matter of superiority, but of cultural preservation and magical tradition. Godric vehemently disagreed with this position. His personal experience had shown him that some of the most talented and courageous wizards he had ever met came from Muggle backgrounds. He argued that magic was a gift that transcended family lineage, and that excluding students based on their heritage would be not only unfair, but also a waste of talent. For Godric, what mattered wasn't where you came from, but what you chose to do with your gifts. This philosophical difference deepened when practical issues began to arise. Muggle-born students sometimes arrived at Hogwarts with less knowledge of the wizarding world, requiring additional instruction in traditions, history, and even basic concepts that children raised in magical families took for granted. Salazar saw this as evidence that these students did not belong at Hogwarts. Godric, on the other hand, saw this as an opportunity. He believed that students with diverse perspectives enriched everyone's educational experience. Those raised in the Muggle world brought new questions and fresh perspectives that challenged established assumptions. For him, the diversity of backgrounds made Hogwarts stronger, not weaker. The final confrontation between Godric and Salazar took place at a meeting of the Founders' Council that became legendary for its emotional intensity. Salazar presented an ultimatum. Either Hogwarts changed its admissions policy to exclude Muggle-borns, or he would leave the school. He expected the other founders to yield to his demands, given his significant contribution to the school. To their surprise, Godric immediately replied that if this was Salazar's final position, then it would be best for everyone if he truly left. Godric declared that Hogwarts had been founded on principles of equality and opportunity, and that to abandon these principles would be to betray everything they had worked for. Rowena and Helga, albeit reluctantly, supported Godric. They recognized that while they respected Salazar as a wizard and educator, they could not accept his discriminatory views. The decision was made. If Salazar could not accept the diversity of student backgrounds, then he could no longer be part of the Hogwarts educational project. Salazar, feeling betrayed and humiliated, left Hogwarts in a dramatic departure. But before he left, he took an action that would haunt the school for centuries. He secretly created the Chamber of Secrets. This chamber was more than just a hidden space. It was a manifestation of his beliefs, protected by powerful magic and inhabited by a creature that could purify the school, according to his vision. Godric was devastated by the loss of his former friend and collaborator, but also deeply concerned about the implications of Salazar's departure. He knew Salazar was too powerful to simply depart without leaving some kind of legacy or contingency. Godric spent months searching for any magic or traps Salazar might have left behind. The search for the Chamber of Secrets became an obsession for Godric in the last years of his life. He knew Salazar had created something, but all his attempts to find it failed. Salazar's magic was simply too cunning, and the chamber would remain hidden for nearly 1,000 years. After Salazar's departure, Godric, Rowena, and Helga worked tirelessly to ensure that Hogwarts continued to thrive. Salazar's loss had created a void, not only in terms of teaching, but also in the diversity of perspectives that had made the school so rich. The 3 remaining founders had to adapt quickly, taking on additional responsibilities and recruiting new teachers. As Godric grew older, he began to consider how to ensure that his values and legacy would continue to influence Hogwarts long after his death. He had seen how Salazar's departure had changed the school's dynamic, and he was determined to leave elements that would continue to guide and protect future students and faculty. His most important decision was to entrust his legendary sword to the Sorting Hat. This was no casual choice. Godric recognized that the sword was more than just a weapon. It was a symbol of his values, an artifact with unique magical properties and potentially a crucial tool for protecting the school in times of great danger. The enchantment he placed on the sword was complex and elegant. The sword would only appear to a true Gryffindor in times of dire need, when genuine courage and nobility of purpose were required. It wasn't enough to simply be in danger. The witch or wizard needed to demonstrate the qualities Godric valued most: selfless courage, a willingness to sacrifice oneself for others, and a determination to do what was right, regardless of personal consequences. This magic proved its wisdom centuries later when the sword appeared to Harry Potter in the Chamber of Secrets. In that moment, Harry demonstrated exactly the qualities Godric had sought. He was risking his life not for personal glory, but to save a fellow student and protect all Muggle-born students at Hogwarts. The irony was not lost on him. Godric's sword was used to defeat the creature Salazar had left to purify the school. The exact circumstances of Godric Gryffindor's death remain a mystery to this day. What we know comes from fragmentary records and legends passed down through the centuries. What is clear is that he did not die peacefully in his bed, but under circumstances related to a final great adventure or mission. Some sources suggest that Godric set out on a final quest to locate and neutralize Salazar's Chamber of Secrets. Others suggest he was investigating a dark threat that had emerged in northern Scotland. There are even reports that he was searching for Salazar himself, hoping to reconcile with his former friend and convince him to abandon his prejudices. Godric Gryffindor's impact on the wizarding world extends far beyond the house that bears his name. His principles of courage, inclusion, and justice became fundamental values, not only at Hogwarts, but throughout much of British magical society. The idea that personal worth matters more than family background, so revolutionary in its time, has become a cornerstone of modern magical culture. Gryffindor House has produced many of the most important heroes in magical history. From Sir Cadogan, the knight-errant whose portrait still graces Hogwarts, to Albus Dumbledore, who led the fight against Grindelwald and later Voldemort, Gryffindors have consistently stood on the front lines against the forces of darkness. Godric's influence can also be seen in the development of the magical educational system itself. His insistence on practical education, combined with character development, influenced how defense against the dark arts was taught throughout Europe. Magical schools in other countries adopted elements of his philosophy, recognizing that producing technically competent wizards was not enough. It was also necessary to develop people of character. The concept of pure blood versus Muggle-born, which had caused so much conflict between Godric and Salazar, continued to be a source of tension in magical society for centuries. However, Godric's position that origin did not determine worth was gradually accepted by the majority of the magical community. This evolution was neither easy nor quick, but his inclusive vision eventually prevailed. Gryffindor Tower, where Gryffindor students reside during their Hogwarts years, was carefully designed by Godric to reflect his values and educational philosophy. Unlike Slytherin's dungeons or Ravenclaw's ethereal surroundings, Gryffindor Tower was positioned high within the castle, symbolizing aspiration and the courage to reach great heights. The tower's windows offer panoramic views of the Hogwarts grounds and the mountains beyond, constantly reminding students of the larger world they will one day help protect and serve. Godric believed that physical perspective led to mental perspective. The higher you climbed, the better you could see not only the world's beauty, but also its dangers and needs. The common room, with its red and gold decor, was designed to be a place of warmth and camaraderie. The comfortable armchairs around the fireplace encouraged conversation and friendships. Godric knew that courage was easier to find when you weren't alone, and that the bonds formed between housemates often lasted a lifetime. The portrait of the Fat Lady, which guards the entrance to Gryffindor Tower, was personally chosen by Godric. He wanted a guardian who was welcoming yet vigilant, someone who could distinguish between genuine students and potential threats. The Fat Lady became not only a security system, but also a beloved part of Gryffindor lore, known for her warm and occasionally dramatic personality. Godric established several traditions that continue to define the Gryffindor experience centuries later. Perhaps the most important is the tradition that Gryffindors support one another, regardless of personal differences. This was not just a rule, but a deep philosophy that true strength comes from unity and mutual support. The tradition of recognized valor also began with Godric. He instituted the practice of celebrating not only great heroic deeds, but also small acts of everyday courage. A student who stood up for a weaker classmate, admitted a costly mistake, or persisted in the face of academic adversity received equal recognition to those who performed more dramatic feats. Godric also established the tradition that all Gryffindors, regardless of year or ability, were responsible for the safety and well-being of their housemates. Older students were expected to mentor younger ones, not only academically, but also in matters of character and courage. This tradition created a culture where leadership was seen as service, not privilege. In the centuries following Godric's death, his influence continued to shape important events in the wizarding world. During the Goblin Revolt, it was primarily Gryffindor-educated wizards who championed goblin rights and worked toward a peaceful resolution. During the wars against Grindelwald, the resistance was largely led by Gryffindors, including Albus Dumbledore. Godric's philosophy of inclusion and equality also influenced important political developments. The eventual abolition of discriminatory laws against Muggleborns was largely driven by wizards who had been educated in Gryffindor values. The magical creature rights movement also found many of its leaders among Gryffindor graduates. During Voldemort's rise, the parallels with the original conflict between Godric and Salazar became hauntingly clear. Voldemort, who claimed descent from Salazar Slytherin, promoted the very same prejudices that had led to the Founders' separation 1,000 years earlier. The Order of the Phoenix, which opposed Voldemort, was composed predominantly of Gryffindors and those who shared Godric's values. The appearance of Godric's sword at crucial moments in magical history serves as a kind of ongoing test of the values he had established. The first historically documented appearance was during the 14th century, when it appeared to Sir Nicholas de Mimsy Porpington during his heroic but unsuccessful defense of a Muggle village against a group of dark wizards. During the wars against Grindelwald, the sword briefly appeared to a young Auror protecting a group of Muggle refugees, allowing him to defeat one of Grindelwald's most powerful lieutenants. The sword disappeared immediately after the battle, as it always did, but its appearance served as a reminder that Godric's values remained relevant even in modern times. The sword's most famous and well-documented appearance was, of course, its arrival to Harry Potter in the Chamber of Secrets. The fact that a second-year student could summon the sword demonstrated that Godric's criteria for true worth had nothing to do with age, experience, or raw magical power. Harry had demonstrated the very qualities Godric valued most: a willingness to sacrifice himself for others, courage in the face of mortal danger, and a rejection of prejudices based on origin. Godric Gryffindor's life and philosophy offer lessons that remain relevant to the modern wizarding world. His insistence that personal worth transcends family origin remains important in a society that still occasionally struggles with prejudice. His view that courage manifests itself in many different forms offers a model for leadership that goes beyond physical bravery. Perhaps most importantly, Godric's example demonstrates the importance of upholding principles even when it's difficult or costly. His willingness to lose a close friend rather than compromise his values of inclusion and equality shows that some things are more important than personal convenience or superficial harmony. Godric's approach to education, combining technical competence with character development, also offers valuable insights. In an age where magic becomes increasingly powerful and potentially dangerous, the need to educate not only skilled wizards, but also ethical wizards, is more important than ever. Even today, nearly 1,000 years after his death, aspects of Godric's life remain mysterious. The location of his final body has never been discovered, leading to persistent theories that he may have found a way to escape death, or that his remains are protected by powerful magics that prevent their discovery. Even more intriguing are the occasional reports, over the centuries, of encounters with a wizard matching Godric's description. These encounters always occur in times of great danger or need, and the figure always disappears before his identity can be confirmed. While most magical historians dismiss these accounts as mythology, they continue to surface with enough regularity to keep the question open. The story of Godric Gryffindor is more than just the biography of a powerful wizard. It is the story of the evolution of magical values themselves. Through his life, we see the transformation of a fragmented and often prejudiced magical society into something closer to the ideals of equality and justice he championed. His legacy lives on not only in the house that bears his name, but in every act of courage performed in defense of the weak, in every refusal to accept discrimination, in every moment someone chooses what is right over what is easy. The sword he left behind keeps appearing because the need for the qualities it represents never completely disappears. In a world where dark forces periodically resurface, where ancient prejudices find new expression, where the temptation of easy power continues to corrupt, Godric Gryffindor's example stands as a beacon. He reminds us that true strength comes not from domination or exclusion, but from including others in the fight for justice. Thousands of young wizards have passed through Gryffindor Tower over the past 1,000 years, each carrying a bit of its founder's spirit into the world. Some became famous, others remained unknown, but all were touched by the vision of a man who believed that courage and kindness could triumph over fear and hatred. Perhaps this is Godric Gryffindor's greatest magic, not his powerful spells or his legendary sword, but his ability to inspire others to be better than they thought possible. In every Gryffindor graduate who stands up to defend the oppressed, in every wizard who refuses to accept injustice, in every act of selfless courage, Godric Gryffindor lives again. And so, as long as there is injustice to be fought, the weak to be protected, and young wizards to be inspired, the story of Godric Gryffindor will live on, not as a legend of the past, but as a living force shaping the future of the wizarding world, one courageous act at a time.